Hey, this is John Broughton, executive producer of Farragut Forward. I also play Captain Carter.
Hey, this is Johnny K. I'm the director of Farragut Forward.
Hi, we were performers in Farragut Forward. I'm Penelope.
And I'm Justin from Farpoint Toys.
And this is Trek Untold.
Hello and welcome to Trek Untold, the Star Trek podcast that goes beyond the stars. I'm your host, Matthew Kaplowitz, and today it's a very special episode because we are talking all about fan films, and in particular, one that just came out very, very recently. We're talking about Farragut Forward. This premiered on October 1st, 2024 over on YouTube and several other places. We'll get to that in a little bit later on here. And we are joined by a group of very talented individuals who are all part of this amazing process, but you don't have to take my word for it, so I'm going to go ahead and let them introduce themselves to you.
All right, John Broughton, executive producer, and I also play Captain Carter.
Yeah, hey, Johnny K. I'm the director of Farragut Forward. I'm with Chaotica Studios, and thanks for having us on.
Justin and
Penelope Daniels.
We were extras.
Yeah, we were lucky enough to be invited to come on.
And friends.
And friends. But we were lucky enough to be invited to be part of this awesome project.
Yeah, so I'm surrounded by a group of very awesome people here right now. Awesome, very talented people. And we're going to be digging into a whole lot about Farragut Forward in a moment here. But before we start digging into the film, I just want to mention to you folks out there listening or watching, if you're new or an existing fan of this podcast, please don't forget to follow us on all the social medias. Follow Trek Untold on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, even on TikTok, although I promise I won't do any fan dances from Star Trek V. And of course, if you're able to financially support this podcast, go ahead and check us out on Patreon at patreon.com/TrekUntold. And shout out to my awesome subscribers and supporters on Patreon, because thanks to them, I keep doing this show and have the ability to keep rocking on and upgrade things and do all sorts of cool stuff. So big shout out to those folks out there. But yeah, let's go ahead now. Let's start talking some film stuff here. And I do want to mention, of course, before we start really getting into the nitty gritty of production here, because we got a lot of very important folks as part of this film here today, I wanted to ask each of you, what's your earliest memory of Star Trek? And I'm going to start with the person with the Enterprise behind them right now, John B. What's your earliest memory of Star Trek?
Probably watching, I was at my grandmother's house. Star Trek was in syndication, and I remember the episode Mary. I only remembered it because it was a bunch of kids running around with Kirk and beating him up. So that's my earliest memory of Star Trek.
Yes, sort of a similar thing, probably early 80s, syndication of the original series. It was definitely in color because I remember the colors. I like that, there were the golds and the blues and the reds. That kind of captured me as a little kid. I have no idea what episode it was. I just remember the colors. And then not too long after that, I probably saw Star Trek 2, 3, one of those, and then I was hooked.
My story is really similar to Johnny's. My mother loved the original series, so we would see that occasionally. But again, like he said, the sets and the costumes and the colors were just so cool. The movies were on TV, and then once TNG came out, that was it. Like, I was hook, line, and sinker, like, forever.
I think my first specific memory, I'm sure as a kid I saw TOS on syndication like everybody else. We're just that age. But my first specific memory, I think that Wrath of Khan was on Prism of all, Prism was like a HBO type.
Yeah. You're
thing.
Dating yourself here.
And I remember watching it a lot. Like every time it was on, I would watch it again. And it just became I was like, wow, this is amazing. And I think I sought out Star Trek after that.
So I love that we were all long-time standing Star Trek nerds here. This is the perfect meeting of the minds today. And this, of course, makes sense that Farragut Forward, this is really an homage to a very classic period of Star Trek. So let's go ahead and start talking about this here. John, you have done fan-produced Star Trek series for quite some time here. I do want to have you talk a little bit about that for us today. But, why go down this route of taking this pre-established franchise and essentially making your own fan films out of it? Like what drove you, what inspired you to go down this very unique kind of path of filmmaking?
In 2004, I saw the works of another fan film group, and I thought, why not do it myself? I thought it was great because I had collected over the years a lot of props and costumes, and they were in a display cabinet. And my best friend Mike Bednar and I, who we were working on making a lot of the props together, I said, why don't we do this? And he was not on board. But I took out 10K. I took out 10,000 from my 401k. I bought all the equipment, knew nothing about filmmaking. And we just kind of figured it out as we went along. But I think that the reason for doing it, Matt, was, and I think why a lot of people do Star Trek fan films is because it's the ultimate extension of being a fan, because you can live out the experience as a starship commander. You can walk down the corridor and step upon the transporter room. You can sit in the captain's chair. I mean, it's the ultimate experience as a fan.
That's true, but it's also the ultimate commitment to time and money. Because again, you've been self-producing the series for quite some time. That is really, an admirable undertaking to do.
Yeah, we're now rolling up on the 20th anniversary of Farragut. Yeah. Crazy.
That's amazing. But the fact that you've been still going strong, and I got a chance to watch some of the older ones as well, and just watching the progression, and we're going to talk about that in this interview, just watch the progression of everything you've done with the series so far. That to me is actually, I think, the real amazing story about this, because you guys have really taken it from one thing, and it was great when it first began, but now it's like a whole other level.
Yeah, I mean, I think, for 60s Trek, and we took the same attitude, same approach to building all the sets, making all the exacting costumes, having them tailored, making all the props. But I think with the movie era, it's a lot more sophisticated. The uniforms they're real garments. I mean, you're talking about making suit jackets, a lot more involvement with the sets. They're a lot more sophisticated. But yeah, it's a whole different level than what we were doing, even with what we were doing with 60s TV Trek.
Now, Johnny K, you have also been doing short films within fandoms as well as some other work, including, by the way, a recent Batman film called The Oath, which congratulations on just breaking over 1 million views, which round of applause for Johnny K for that. But kind of same question here. What is it about these bits of nerddom that drove you to want to create something as lofty as films within this world that pre-exists already?
Well, I mean, with me, it was... I'm kind of the outsider to fan films. I did other, shorts before I got into doing fan films. The first fan film I ever did was the prologue, to Farragut, which John asked me to come on a few years ago and do. So I kind of said, I don't know that I have a lot of time for fan films because I have so many original ideas I want to get out and original stories to tell. But when John offered me prologue and I knew it was set in the Wrath of Khan era, that's what got me. If he had offered, hey, do you want to do a short 2-minute thing that's set in the 60s, or something like that, that's not like my aesthetic, I guess, as a filmmaker. And I'm not knocking the 60s show. It's very different than Wrath of Khan, right? But when he offered me prologue, I thought, you know what, maybe I will do a fan film, because there was something exciting about, what John said a minute ago. All right, let's actually get into that world. We've always seen that world on TV, but what happens when I'm actually standing on a Klingon set? That's going to be great, right? So anyway, I went from the guy that said, I really don't have time to doing fan films to doing 3 in a row. Every project I've worked on since 2021 has been a fan film. We did prologue. We went right into The Oath, which was our Batman fan film, which is set 1 week before Tim Burton's Batman 89. And then, the last 2 years have been nothing but Farragut Forward. So I kind of went the full spectrum from no fan films to that's all I've done for a few years. But yeah, I'll just echo what John said. It's awesome to kind of, I guess it really hit me when I walked onto the Starfleet bridge for the first time and all the lights were on, the computer graphics were there. And that's when I looked around. I said, all right, we're here. This is as close as you will ever get to actually walking onto a starship bridge. And it was kind of addicting after that for me.
And to kind of paint a better picture of who you are as an artist and auteur, if you will, can you tell us what kind of films you did before starting more of these fan films in the last few years? Like what was really the genre that you worked in the most?
Yeah, well, I started off with horror, right? Everyone does. It's cheap. It's cheap and relatively easy. You can go out in the woods with some scary people and evoke reactions from people, right? You don't need Lawrence, you don't need Lawrence of Arabia or Citizen Kane to, or a $25 million budget. You can just go out in the woods, and if you have a good idea, you can do something with it. So yeah, my very first short film was actually just a personal challenge. I gave myself 60 days to write it, shoot it, produce it, and get it out there just to see if I could do it. I'm a procrastinator, so if I gave myself 60 days, I knew that I would get to the end of that and I would have a movie or I wouldn't. And I got to the end of it. I had a little short film called The Killer of Grassy Ridge. I was happy with it. I could stop right there. I threw it on YouTube just to see what would happen. YouTube, we got modest hits. We were a news studio, so nobody knew we existed. So it's not like we broke the internet or anything. But what happened was it got on the festival circuit, which I never expected. And now you have like this little debut 9-minute short film, and it went to over 50 festivals worldwide. I think we had wins. I think we won 28 or 30 festivals. We were winning best U.S. short film. I mean, just crazy. It was like a dream. It was literally like a dream. And, kind of as soon as you hit that thing, it's like, why am I not doing this once a year? Not a feature, right? Not an hour and a half feature, but if I could crank out a 10-minute short film a year, like I would be happy with that. So anyway, I went from Grassy Ridge. The next one was the little one called Red Eagle 1, which is actually not out yet because we're still doing some tweaks on the back end of that. I actually cast John's son Xavier in that. Xavier's was about 5 years younger than he is now. And I want to now go back and take advantage of his age and reshoot some stuff like we planned to do it like that the whole time. But I just came from the short indie film world, started with horror, the easy stuff, and just the budgets over the years have kind of gotten bigger and bigger, and leading up to Farragut, which is definitely the biggest film yet, for sure.
Justin, Penelope, I know we were talking before the interview began how you guys didn't really want to plug this too much here, but I want to plug this because I think it's important to our conversation today. You guys run Farpoint Toys, which is a toy store and museum out in Jersey, which I will say I might be a little bit biased, but I think it is definitely my favorite toy store out in the area, but it's definitely the best out in New Jersey, completely. I'll say it. And
wow, thank you.
And you guys call yourselves Nostalgineers. And while you're not filmmakers per se, you are experts in all things geeky, and you are creative folks. I love what you guys do on your TikToks as well. What do you think drives folks, what do you think drives you to live in this world of nostalgia? And since you see this on a daily basis in your store, what do you think drives people like us, like all of us in this room right now, to seek new things from the old things that we love?
That is a vast question. Like nostalgia, it's a shared experience with all of us. It's not the same thing, but most of us, life gets harder the older you get. The more stress happens, the more problems, you have to make money. So we all harken back to the easier days of childhood or adolescence, on the things that made us happy. It's just those golden, summer days that summers lasted forever. So it's kind of a shared experience with all of us, no matter the fandom, right? You can like G.I. Joe, you can like Star Trek, you can like, Transformers. But when people, the store is more about the camaraderie in the community when people come in, and we all have the same conversation every week.
Who's your favorite Batman?
Right.
What's your favorite
Captain? Trek? Yes. So it's powerful. Nostalgia and the love of the things we grew up with is very powerful.
And there's nothing like it. Like there are other kinds of memories, but there's something about those childhood memories, that nostalgia that brings you to a place that other kinds of memories can't. And I think it comes down to that.
And Star Trek really is one of those fandoms that is like so open and inclusive to everyone. Doesn't matter race, species, corporeal or non-corporeal entities. All these different things here. It's so inclusive of everybody out there. And again, this is something that you guys, I'm sure, see all the time within your store, and people come by to look at the different things you have because your place covers all the fandoms for the quote-unquote boys or the girls or whatever.
The great thing about Trek is it's always been that inclusive. When did Star Trek get woke? Are you kidding me? It's always been open to everyone. And in subtle ways and in obvious ways. And
another thing is it's been happening for so many years that there are Star Trek fans of all ages. So whether you're 100 or 10, you could be a fan of Star Trek in its different iterations. So it's universal in a way, no pun intended. Like so many people.
It's Paramount, actually.
Yeah. So many people can be brought together. So many people can be brought together over it. It's it's ubiquitous. Like everyone's heard of Star Trek, even if they're not a fan of it, they know what it is at least.
Penelope gets 5 points for using ubiquitous in a sentence tonight. So congratulations on that. You're ahead of the points right now.
We've got more, don't worry.
So let me go back to the Johns for a moment here, because I want to ask you guys, and Johnny, you already kind of mentioned that you worked together prior to this, but like, how did you two guys connect and meet up? And more so, how did you guys join forces to make Farragut Forward? Because this is, I think, a bigger production between the two that you guys have ever done together, right?
Oh yeah, I mean,
for sure.
Yeah. Do you want me to tell the story? Jim?
Yeah,
Okay.
go for it. Yeah, it was shortly.
So we were exhibiting at Farpoint convention, or it might have been Shore Leave. It was one of the Maryland-based conventions. We were exhibiting. Johnny stopped by, and we were talking, and it was about a next gen communicator, and it was actually the QMX comm badge, and it wasn't shiny. That wasn't the chrome. It was a very satin. What do you call it? A matte finish. And so we started talking about that. And then fast forward some years ago, I mean, we kept in touch. He gave me some Photoshop tips, and I know he was also in the Klingon uniforms. And we started to talk about Farragut Forward, and I think we had just sold our sets down in Kingsland, Georgia. We had built and amassed 10,000 square foot of all the sets of the original series and laid out in the same configuration. So we had just sold the sets, I believe. And I was talking to Johnny because I was going to use my 2-car garage and make it into the bridge of a Klingon bird of prey.
That's right. I forgot about that.
And I was talking to Johnny because he was my Klingon subject matter expert. And he started to work on some blueprints. And then it was after I saw the premiere of his first film, and I was blown away. I mean, I just thought it was very simplistic in terms of how he shot it, but it was a story that had the twist, it had the mind screw in it. And I was just taken back, and I thought, for his first one out, he hit a grand slam. And then the other things, and then when Batman came along, well, actually Red Eagle 1, I had my son. I was fortunate enough, Johnny asked my son to be in it, and I got to see him work on that behind the scenes. And then I was impressed with his ability as a filmmaker. I think filmmakers are storytellers first. And I thought, as a storyteller, as someone who knew the mechanics, the science of filming it, he had that. And then just everything as a filmmaker, I was very much impressed. And I was fortunate enough to be able to work with him on this project.
And that project is Farragut Forward, as we're going to start talking about here now. And Johnny K., I'd love if you can kind of give us the elevator pitch of what this film is about.
It's a rescue mission. That's the elevator pitch. It's a rescue mission. We've got, we released our 2-minute prologue a couple years ago, so it picks up right on the heels of that, which is, 2 of our main stars, Captain Carter and Captain Tackett. They are kidnapped, and they're being held in a Klingon prison or Klingon jail, Klingon cell, I should say. And it's a rescue mission. So that was our prologue, just to kind of set up that world that these guys are in trouble. We don't know why yet. We find out who has them at the end of the prologue. And then that was just kind of the setup. It was a tease, in media res, right? Let's start the story right in the thick of it. We don't want to start it with a captain's log, we're out here doing this, and then something happens. No, we're going to start right in the middle and just see what happens. So that was kind of the prologue. And then when the full feature, Farragut Forward, started coming together, it was all about a rescue mission. It was all about this is a long elevator pitch, but it was all about how a crew that served together for 20 years, and this is us taking advantage of the fact that Starship Farragut's been around since 2005. Like, we have that as a tool. This is a group that's been together for years and years, off screen and on screen. And what lengths would they go to rescue each other, to help each other? What would they face? Like, how much risk can they tolerate for each other? That's kind of really the underlying theme of Farragut, is taking advantage of these guys that have been doing this stuff for 20 years on screen and off screen, and showing the links that they would go. But yeah, it's a rescue mission that gets a little nasty, and there's a few sparks that fly at the end of it. I'll say that.
Yeah, I do love the fact that, like, as we mentioned, this Farragut series it's got such lore to itself. It has its own continuity within this Star Trek canon here. And just to, again, kind of set the pace, or set the location, rather, of where this takes place. Whereabouts in the Star Trek timeline are we, John?
Oh, I hate the star dates.
I'll say no star dates. How about let's throw it like near a movie or something, make it easier.
I think we're somewhere Star Trek 4, Johnny, right?
It's actually, I mean, he's onto something. We intentionally did not put a star date in the film at first, right? The film actually opens up with a different captain doing his log, and it's Captain's Log Supplemental. And we did that intentionally to get away from the whole star date thing. And it was like that for 2 years. And then right before the film was finished, I called up John. I said, hey, there's a shot that a new scene that'll be mostly voiceover that I want to put in at the very end, just to kind of wrap it all up and bookend the story. And it happened to be a captain's log, and I didn't want to go back to supplemental again. So John and I talked about it. I said, I think we have to pin it to a star date. And the star date in our film is actually, it takes place pretty much right at Star Trek V, if not just a little bit at a little bit after Star Trek V, but not quite yet to Star Trek VI.
And we'll leave anything else related to that to folks who can watch the movie. They can figure things out from there, I think. So I think there's plenty of signals of where this kind of takes place, right? And I also want to commend you guys, too, because you did a crowdfunding campaign to raise the capital to make this film, and you raised over $45,000 through Indiegogo, which that's just astounding, by the way. Anyone who's ever done a campaign knows that it is a lot of work. It basically becomes your full-time job.
It does.
And yeah, I've done some of these before. I've done one that flopped horribly. I've done one that succeeded, but nowhere near the amount that you guys got. So I think this is kind of important for any aspiring filmmakers out there. But what was your strategy to fund this film in that way?
Well, as you pointed out, Matt, it is a full-time job on your full-time job. I know we kept pushing out content, pictures and images and interviews and things to help keep it relevant and keep showing progress, and the financial commitment that was even made prior to even asking for external funding.
I mean, a tip I learned once upon a time, and I think this was through some costume charity groups that I'm a part of. When you're using Indiegogo, this is kind of a pro tip. They have a feature called In Demand. And the trick to In Demand is if you set your goal to something you will hit, that then puts you in demand. And when you're in demand, you can continue to raise money indefinitely. So when we set the goal for Farragut a couple years ago, we set it at 30,000. I think it was 25 or 30,000 was our original goal, and 30 grand. And we thought we could hit that. And we had a few folks say, there's no way you're going to do that. And like you said, we ended up going to almost 46. But we hit that 30 grand 2 years ago. We went in demand after that. And then for the next 2 years, we raised another $16,000, while keeping that campaign open. So sometimes people sign up or register for Indiegogo. They open it up and they think they have a 30 or 60 day funding period. But the reality is, if you set your goal to something you will hit, you can go in demand and then continue to raise money indefinitely. And that actually got us an additional 16 grand. So that probably paid for a Klingon console or something.
On that note, I mean, and it's important for those that may be considering using the crowdfunder that, and this is a lesson learned. I don't even think I shared it with Johnny, but we're getting ready to do another one. We're already in pre-production. We're getting ready to film the sequel to the film that's going to release tomorrow. I don't know why in the hell we decided this, but in 2 weeks we'll be filming again. As we launch the other one, I'm going to make sure to include that, what the goal is this. And if we achieve that, then we'll be able to we'll go in demand, as Johnny mentioned, and that additional money, that additional funding will pay for these items. Because I think it's important that after you hit the baseline, because there was some reaction that we got, not a lot, but some reaction on social media was, well, you reached the goal. Why do you need more money? And so we did explain some of that as we posted, but I think just letting people know up front what the game plan is with the crowdfunder.
Yeah, and every crowdfunder is different. That's like a whole episode of a podcast unto itself, really. But they all have their pros, their cons, why you should use them.
Yeah,
but,
and like you said, I mean, I've done, I think 6. The first one I did was a dismal failure, but I learned from that.
Yeah,
and all the lessons learned rolled into the next one, and the different platforms. Like you say, it's a whole discussion, but
And now, like you said, you're now going into pre-production essentially for whatever's coming next. So, I mean, that's kind of the biz essentially. But, before we get into that how long was production for Farragut Forward?
15 years.
I was just a twinkle in my daddy's eye when we started production.
It felt like it. I had black hair.
I had hair, right?
I didn't have a beard.
I think actual production, I mean, pre-production was probably another 6 months before, but our cameras actually started rolling on production in October of 2022. And tomorrow will be, as we're recording this, tomorrow will be October of 2024. So pretty much 2 years right on the nose for production, and then probably 6 to 8 months of pre-production before that.
I would, yes. I mean, and Matt, just so when we did the prologue, which was just a 3-minute teaser concept, and I had approached Johnny in the summer of 2021, and Prescott, played by Paul Sieber, I reached out to him as well, and I pitched to them both that, hey, I've got some of these costumes that we started to do Farragut Forward before we had tabled it for some time. And I said, could we just do this concept just that way I could feel that I've done movie era Trek in some capacity. And the success of that, we immediately already started working on the sets, and that was filmed in November of 2021. And we were already building platforms at that point. So the commitment in terms of start building was already happening. December 2021, we actually filmed the commercial, and we had the helmet navigation console, the astrogator, and we had some prototype bridge chairs made.
So it never ends, basically.
No, it doesn't.
It's so much work. Yeah, it's so much work.
So yeah, I want to now actually dive a little bit more into the actual process itself. I do want to throw a question to our folks at Farpoint for a moment here and just ask how you guys got looped into this craziness.
So I met Johnny many years ago in one of those charity cosplay groups that he mentioned, a G.I. Joe group, and just been following what he's been up to, friends on Facebook, you know how that goes, following his movies and whatnot. And I guess it was March of this year. He posted on his Facebook, like, hey, I need some extras for like a final big, battle kind of scene for this movie I'm working on. It's a Star Trek film. Do anyone that will be interested in hanging out and playing dress up for an evening? And like my hand went up immediately. Justin's hand went up immediately. Any excuse for me to like dress up and have fun with my friends is a good excuse to do something cool. So we made the trip down to Virginia and we filmed our little thing. Justin got to be a Klingon, which, I mean,
stretch.
I got painted all green. And it was just super cool.
It's got to be the easiest day in the makeup chair for you, Justin. But I'm going to ask you about that a little bit later on. But yeah, that's kind of cool. Though. Again, like all these people, it's just like the pieces fit together. And that's also part of micro budget filmmaking too, is essentially like you are relying on things like that. Like, hey, I need my friends to come out here and do this. Let's kind of talk about that again from the filmmaking perspective of, $45,000 to anybody outside listening, if this is not in the filmmaking world, they think that's a ton of money. In filmmaking, that's not a ton of money.
No. And in fact, we went exceedingly well over budget. And I had a lot of faith in Johnny and his abilities and anything that he asked for. There was a couple of things set wise that we accommodated because I knew at the end of the day, it would have been worth it to get it on film. So, but as Star Trek fans could also be a bastardly bunch. And the perception of 45 or 46K is like all this money. But in filmmaking, thanks for pointing it out, it really isn't. And the costumes alone, which the fabric and all the notions and the chain and all the rank pins and everything. I mean, the jacket alone by itself would retail like for $1,500, just the jacket itself. The set's very much more complex. Those chairs that you saw, the iconic bridge chairs from Star Trek 1 through 4, those were all built from scratch. Unlike classic Trek and some of the other incarnations, they they repurposed other office chairs. This was all built. Everything was built from scratch, and there was no green screen.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up too. In fact, because I was kind of keeping an eye out to see where things were green screen, where things were faked or whatever. But no, everything is pretty much physical, practical effects, other than CG battle sequences of the ships. But as far as sets go, I mean, to me, that was the biggest thing that drew me in, because I'm watching this thing and I'm like, oh my god, these bridges look so good. Like, it looks so authentic. The L cars are nuts to me. The Klingon sets too. That was actually, I'll be honest with you, that was one of the things where I got worried about, because I was like, this could either go really well or really kind of cheesy. But everything felt like genuine. Like, I was really wondering, did you guys go to the Paramount lot and just steal all their stuff because it looked that good?
And that was a full 360 enclosed, had a ceiling. I mean, when you were in that Klingon Bird of Prey bridge set, you were actually in a Klingon Bird of Prey. It was, yeah.
And that was something I kind of, I don't want to say insisted on, because we did have limits, obviously, to our budget and resources. But when we were in pre-production, we talked about green screens, and I'm not knocking green screens. That's a great way to make a fan film, especially on a budget. And all of them, virtually all the fan films do that now. And we understand why now when you look at our wallets, like, we get it. But that was actually something I kind of stuck to my guns. I said, you know what, if we're actually going to do practical sets, to me, like, there's no greater way to get back to the 80s era of Wrath of Khan through Undiscovered Country. They didn't use a lot of green screen back then, if any, maybe toward the end. Those were practical sets. Everything actually existed in real life. And I've heard Paul Sieber and some of our other actors say, they do a lot of green screen work with other projects, but now you're standing in a 360-degree Klingon bridge set. That helps the actors out tremendously, because they don't need to pretend, what's coming at them. And they don't need me as a director in their ear saying, okay, now pretend you're seeing this. No, they can see it. They're in that world, and all the actors, it's really beneficial to the actors when you have a real set.
Yeah, I'm just petitioning right now, John, by the way, just, for the next film, feel free to reach out, because I want to be on that set so bad. That thing looks so good. I'm so jealous of everybody who got to actually hang out on that set wearing the Monster Maroons. So, for each of you guys now, too, this is a question for both the Johns here, John and Johnny. This is going to be confusing, but I'll do my best here. What did each of you bring to the table for this project that you on your own might not have had the ability to do?
It's a real good question.
Well, I think for me, it's a little bit easier. I think I had the legacy and reputation, I guess. I had the infrastructure of sets and the characters, and I had the vehicle for which Johnny was able to do it. I did not have the exceptional talents that Johnny, as a filmmaker, as a cinematographer, I didn't have that. I mean, that's what he brought. And I think that good marriage, if you will, is why it's such a success.
Yeah, just similar to what John said. And thank you, John. That was kind of you, by the way. Just that legacy of Starship Farragut, like, it made my life so much easier as a director, because what am I going to say to, Holly Bednar about how she should play Commander Smithfield? Like, she's played Commander Smithfield for 20 years. Like, it made my life so much easier. And just also, when you look at Farragut as a story, we didn't need to waste time, and we had no time to waste, frankly. Like, we didn't need to waste time on exposition. We don't need to introduce the audience. Okay, this is who this person is. This is their role. This is who this, like, all that's established.
That.
So
I hate that.
Yeah. So we could just bypass the exposition, and that legacy, like the stuff that John brought, and specific to John, like his energy for this stuff. I mean, I have to go, like, take breaks every now and then, and I'm an introverted person, so I have to go to a quiet place and recharge. And you heard John a minute ago say, like, they're going to start shooting the next one in 2 weeks. And I'm like, are you effing crazy? Like, take a break, like, go to the beach, like, do anything other than go right back into production. So that's a perfect example of John's energy. I think a lot of times was inspiring, not just to me, but to a lot of other folks that, okay, we're actually not going to stop or slow down. We're going to just keep going and then keep going and then keep going. So John definitely brought a lot of that to the table.
Yeah, I'm glad, Johnny, that you used the word legacy in there, because I want to ask Penelope and Justin right now about that. I mean, how much did you guys know about the Farragut series before you jumped into production for it? And I mean, were you guys even interested in, like, fan produced things like this?
Honestly, we had not been exposed to the Farragut starship before we got involved. But on set, the day that we were there, John gave us the stack of DVDs. So there's such a history there. And I don't want to spoil the movie itself for anyone who hasn't seen it as of this podcast. But the fact that they can reference all of that history is so amazing.
I want to make a point, though. You don't need to watch any of that history to enjoy this slice of Star Trek movie making here.
Yeah.
You don't need the exposition or the character introductions. You know where you're at as soon as you're in. And that's the strength of both of the actors who have been playing these characters and Johnny directing it and the script. It's just like a slice of life, small story in the whole Star Trek universe that you don't need any of that previous stuff. I'm sure that makes it way better, having seen these characters grow for 20 years. I mean, that's amazing, but it's not integral to enjoying this as it's.
That's good to hear, Justin. That's good to hear. I was concerned about some of that because I was even asking my son yesterday. I said, "Were you able to follow?" Because I had my kids. I haven't forced any Star Trek.
I'm sure that would get super old for them.
And my son could care less. So I specifically asked him, and he said, "Yeah, he was able to follow it." So I'm glad you said that because you sometimes wonder. And
all my cards on the table, you handed us, or one of you guys handed us the whole pile of DVDs and told us about the animated, and I have not gotten around to enjoying it yet.
Well, I know where they are.
We have them, and I'm going to. But I don't know if I wanted to do it before I saw this premiere, or I just wanted to see what this was about before I did that, so I wouldn't have expectations. And to be honest, now I can't wait to go back and watch it all. I couldn't anyway because on the set I could tell this was special. We've done some micro budget movies before and some small things, but this was completely different than anything we had experienced.
Light years beyond, yeah.
No joke. I mean, no pun intended.
I keep doing that.
The way Johnny ran the set and the quality of, like John was saying, of the costumes and the script and just seeing how everything was shot. I felt like we were on a large budget movie at that time. So, and now seeing the finished product, and I hope people who watch it, it's unbelievable what you guys did with the money you did. It's unbelievable, to be honest with you. And I know you spent more than the crowdfunding, but it looks like a $250,000. I wouldn't know what kind of budget. It looks like a larger budget production than it really was.
Thank you, man. Thanks.
Thank you, Justin.
Absolutely.
I'm going to second everything Justin said, especially the part about not really needing to know much about Farragut coming into this film, because I don't know much about it either. I've really not dove too deep into the world of the Star Trek fan-produced films, but I jumped right in. Didn't really know too much about the lore, honestly, until after I finished watching, when I went to look it up, and I was like, oh, wow, there's actually like a lot more history behind this. This is really cool. So yeah, absolutely. You don't really need to have that background in it. You can just jump in at any point, and this film is really, like, I think, an amazing introduction to the entirety of the series. Now, Justin, since you brought up being on the set here, I want to talk about a little bit your experience, and Justin and Penelope, your experience together on this set here. Because, in my head, I'm like watching that scene that you guys are in, and I'm just like imagining Justin trying to convince Johnny to let your character use the Atlantean sword from Conan the Barbarian.
There's a picture of us on set with him with the batleth and me at his feet like Conan and Valeria. There is.
So when Johnny put out the call when Johnny put out the call for friends to come as extras, and we responded, he didn't think we would because we're 3 hours away in Jersey, but it's Star Trek. It's we've seen what Johnny's done, and we're like, all right, we're in. Klingon, oh my god. So as soon as when he responded, hey, I'm glad you guys are coming, I have a batleth for you. And I think the only Klingon on set with a batleth. And that was it. That's all I needed. He had to pry it from me at the end of shooting that night.
And since then, he got
I had to
his
buy
own.
one, yeah.
Yeah,
I finally own a batleth.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's been on his Christmas list for a while, and we finally got him one after that, because once he held that, he was like, it's over, I need
But it was a lot of fun, but it was also like, it was a lot of, I'm not going to speak to how they made it. Johnny's the director, but it was controlled chaos. There was craft services, there was the costumers, and there was multiple people doing makeup. And think about this. the amount of Klingons, she was painted completely green.
Yeah.
We had Klingon, the head, nutshell looking things.
Walnut head, yeah.
There were multiple effects coordinators. They're putting us all together, making sure between takes we were still together.
And everybody had their tasks, and everybody was coordinated. Everybody was working together. Like, okay, you have to go to the costume tent. It's over here. Makeup tent's over here. Like, you need a touch up. Go over here. Everybody knew what they were doing. Everybody was making sure everybody was safe and everything was working. There was controlled chaos, but like the best kind of chaos, like the fun kind.
Yeah, the energy was great. Yeah, and we were there late. And the energy stayed good.
Yeah,
the entire time. It was a great experience.
It was so much fun,
and you could see it in the film. Like sometimes you have a fun time, and at the end of it, you're just like, oh, it was more fun than it looked. It looks so good that like. We're not embarrassed to say, hey, we were part of this.
It looks better on film than it did doing it.
Oh, that's his eye shooting.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was so much fun.
And Johnny, I mean, how rewarding is it to hear that feedback right there? Because again, I know you just had the premiere last night, and you got to be in a room full of people cheering you on, watching the finished product, but Justin and Penelope just gave you guys a hell of an endorsement for the production end, which has got to be amazing.
It was, yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead, John.
I was just going to say that it's really great to hear. I mean, we pride ourselves on trying to do a professional effort, but I think at the end of the day, we just want it to be fun for everyone because that's the whole point, right? I mean, and we'd hate for people to have had a bad experience. So it's good to hear that you guys enjoyed yourselves.
And we had, and thanks for that, guys. I mean, it's actually awesome to hear that perspective because John or I, we don't have that perspective. So to hear that from you guys, it's pretty cool. It also comes down to like, don't waste people's time, right? If you've got people like you guys, you got in the car for 3 or 4 hours to drive to a place to help us out, we'd better have our act together, and when we like the production team, and by the way, that's a big credit to, our production managers for that specific shoot you're talking about. I mean, that's Corey and Heather and Dave and Case and a lot of the folks on our team that worked, weekly conference calls, weekly meetings to line all that stuff up and just to make sure it did go as smoothly as it can and then expect it because it was nighttime and exteriors. You got to expect the rainstorms. You got to expect what if it's super windy and we've got people up high on scaffolding. Like you have to contingency plan all of that stuff. And I mean, those guys worked really, really hard to make that process you just described, Penelope, which is okay, finish here, now go over here, now go over here. And the fact that all those guys, because they were all tired and burnt out, and if they were doing that with a smile on their face and being able to keep the energy high and nobody was getting stabbed with a bat lift before the night was over, like that's kudos to those guys. So.
Justin, we're looking at you on that one.
No comment. You have to watch the film.
Well, I think this is kind of a really good place to talk about what I feel like is the elephant in the room. And I'm going to direct this question at you, John, because you've been doing this for a long time here. This is a Star Trek fan film, meaning it is not officially licensed by Paramount or whoever is the controlling body who owns all this craziness, right? So what is the biggest challenge of making something that is in this world, but that is essentially unlicensed? Like, have you had to butt heads with Paramount? Has that ever been an issue with you guys?
No. I think that we've abided by the spirit of the guidelines. I think in good faith. We haven't used anything from their library. We haven't used any musical scores.
And for folks who don't know, by the way, can you tell us what are those guidelines, just in a nutshell?
There are about 10 or 12 guidelines. They're not rules. It's not a law, but essentially it's what the legal team at Paramount, CBS, Viacom, whatever they're calling themselves now, are asking people like us to abide by, to respect their intellectual property, their trademarks, their licensed material. They've got some limitations on how much you can raise. They have limitations on the length, but we felt that in order to tell this story, it couldn't be done in the format that was requested. But I think in every other way, we've abided by the guidelines.
Nonprofit, obviously, no one's making a dime. That seems to be the one they care the most about. And
that too. I
don't blame them. We're not making money off Star Trek here, so understand.
And once they see what the film is like, I mean, they'll know that it was probably it was essentially doubled what was raised.
And this is also why number one rule in filmmaking is you don't spend your own money as much as you can on these films.
It's more fun to spend somebody else's money. That's a guideline.
And this is for the entire panel today here, because essentially, you know, being part of the Farragut series, you're now also getting to live out various parts of your own personal fantasies. You know, John, you get to be the captain of a starship, and you've been that now for decades. Johnny, you get to now live the dream. You get to be the director. You're now basically, you get to be the Jonathan Frakes, if you will. In this case, you get to be behind the camera, calling the shots. And Justin and Penelope, you guys get to be awesome aliens running around on a planet far, far away in a distant world. That's just got to be like one of the coolest things. And this is just kind of an overarching question to just kind of ask you guys to look back for a moment, put some perspective on this. How does it feel to see where you are right now and considering what you've done, even in this last year, let's just say, but how does it feel to just kind of take it all in and think about this experience as a whole?
It's insane. I actually said to John a little while ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, when our trailer came out, I said, John, imagine if we could go back in time 2.5 years ago and just show ourselves the trailer that we just put out. Like our mind would be blown and we would know, you know what, all of this will be worth it. If we could just transport ourselves from when we first started writing the script, skip over everything that happened in between, and then just look at the trailer and know that in 2.5 years, this is the trailer that's going to get put out, not to mention the actual film that's out now. But even if we had just been able to see the trailer 2 years ago, I mean, we would have just had been giddy, I think. So it's amazing to me how far we've come. This was an enormous project, and I hope that shows through.
Yeah, I totally agree with what Johnny said. Yeah. Ditto.
I mean, I'm just we're in the movie for like 2 seconds, but like being part of the whole experience and the way you guys like have embraced us, like last night at the premiere, like if we're in it for 2 seconds, but we felt like we were really important. You know, you made everybody on set, everybody involved, just feel like you're part of something. So, you know, it's not just 2 seconds in a movie. We're part of a family now. And I know that sounds kind of silly and cheesy, but it's true. It's really how we felt. It's how I felt anyway.
So I enjoy, like I've done some of these little things and I enjoy acting. I enjoy being on sets. And I lend myself to a certain type, you know. So as a dude who, you know, a nerdy guy who looks a certain way, I've always loved Klingons. Always. So to get to have played a Klingon in this, it was amazing. It was awesome. And all my thanks to you guys for letting us do it. It was super, super fun.
And you had a line. You got to have a line too.
This guy got a line.
He threw a line. Yes, Johnny threw a line. I got a line. Seeing ourselves on, you know, and we also got to go to a premiere, and see it on a screen in a theater, which is like, whoa, how cool is this? You know,
it was really special. Like most folks are going to be seeing this, you know, on their TVs at home.
Yeah.
So it was really special for us to be able to see it on this. So thank you guys again for letting us be part of this whole thing.
Really thank you for being in it.
We're just like over here like, oh.
It was just really cool. I don't know. It's not every day you get to be in a movie.
Not at all.
Yeah.
You guys got to be in a movie. Justin gets his SAG after card now with a speaking line. That's pretty awesome.
This was not a
not yet. We're gonna get to that point though. We'll get you there soon. Although I do want to nerd out with you guys for a minute too, though, because we didn't really talk about this a ton here, and I know we're winding down. But Penelope, Justin, the starship battles are friggin' nuts. Those things look so good. I do want to commend the graphics, the visual effects team you guys had, because those ship battles were just beautiful.
Listen, I can't say this enough. The sets were phenomenal. The costumes, every stitch, like everything looked so good. The graphics were outrageous. Like,
and the soundtrack. I mean, if we're touching on all bases here, there's the outside exterior scene with when you see, you know, the Klingons and the people on the planet, and there's like this drum soundtrack going on. And I know this was all music made for this. So good, and lends to the energy and the vibe of the scene so well. I was sitting there watching. I got the chills a couple times watching this. Like I didn't enjoy it because we're in it. You know what I mean? Like we didn't make a difference either way, really. Well, my line was amazing, but we enjoyed it because it was. I hope that everybody who watched this before they watched the podcast here and saw it enjoyed it as much as we do. Because if not, they're gonna be like, "Oh, you guys are just, you know."
So I've been a geek forever, and I've seen a lot of fan movies, and there's good ones, and there's great ones. I'm really not just saying this. This was such a professional. This could have been an episode of one of the TV shows. It was actually phenomenal.
I hate to say it, but you know, and I talked to Johnny about it last night. I was like, this is actually produced. There's some. It's better than some episodes in a way. And he was like, well, they had a week to shoot these episodes, and we've been working on this for 2 years. And I said, that's a good point. I get it, but the quality is there for like this. This belongs in the wider universe.
I've never seen a fan film that looked like this. It's just.
I haven't watched many fan films, to be honest with you. It was never really my vibe, because the first couple I watched were always like cringy. This is the opposite. The opposite. I wish there were episodes of DS9 that were as good as this, because there were some episodes. There were some episodes of DS9 where I was just like, oh man.
Voyager, come on, don't say DS9. DS9's good.
Shots, more shots.
I love DS9. I love it, but there are some episodes where you're just like, oh, why'd they make that?
Torpedo off the bow. Well, we mentioned, of course, that hopefully people have watched it by now before they watch this podcast. But, John, for folks who might not have seen this yet and now are curious about it, where can they check out the film?
You can go to YouTube, just search Farragut Forward or Starship Farragut, and you'll find it.
I know that you guys mentioned that something else is in production. Can you tease maybe what will be happening next for the crew of the Farragut?
It's more of a lighthearted fish out of water story. I mean, after the intensity of this one, it's like a wave. It's peaked, so you can only go down. You need to decompress a bit, and we have to do that. We can't go back and have another film like in a similar tone and intensity level. At least I wouldn't want it to do that. So, but the third, it is a 3-tiered story arc. All serialized like Star Trek 2, 3, and 4. The final third one it'll be Farragut Forward on steroids in terms of intensity and storyline. But this one, I mean, it's just, you'll see. I mean, the hour will go by like within 20 minutes. I mean, the flow, the cadence, the momentum, there's just so much going on. It's very fast paced. You're going to love it. You're going to love the ride.
I can't wait to see what happens next. Johnny, how about you? What are you working on right now that's not Star Trek related? I'm
going to work on my tan. I'm going to take a break, and I'm going to go to the beach. I'm going to read a novel. I've got a break coming my way. We're actually, in all honesty, we're going to Antarctica in February. So we're literally going to the end of the planet. And I hope I can not have cell phone signal there and no internet connection. And I'm just going to hang out with some penguins and recenter myself. And it sounds like I just came back from war or something, but no, Farragut has been a very long couple years, especially even, the camera stopped rolling in March, and that's really when the post-production picks up. And that was, solid 6 months of post-production with the editing and the color grading and the sound design and the remaining VFX. And I kind of made a promise to myself one of those days that, I'm okay taking a break for a while. And I mentioned to Justin last night, I said, my idea for another film next year, it might be 2 people in a car with no dialogue, and we can maybe shoot it in one day, and it'll be 5 minutes long. And like, I have no problems, going back to a smaller, quieter story. If it's a story I want to tell, I don't feel the need to kind of keep, one-upping everything we do constantly. Farragut Forward is huge. I don't really feel the need to make my next project, something twice the scope of Farragut Forward. I want the opposite of that. So we might have 2 guys in a car with no dialogue as my next film, and see how it does on the festival run.
And Johnny will make it a great film. It'll be an interesting, fun ride.
That's for him to work on after he gets back from his break to Rarapente.
That's right.
Antarctica, we could do a great fan film.
Oh, you're speaking my language now. My favorite movie. I love that movie.
Yeah, me too.
Well, Penelope, Justin, what do you guys got going on over at Farpoint Toys?
Man,
more of the same.
Just going through toys, just selling memories. That's really what we do all the time. More of same.
Yeah. Just buying collections and getting it from people's basements where it's not being appreciated onto people's shelves who are loving it for the second or third time.
Now, you guys are located deep out in the Jersey Shore, which for me is like a 3-hour trek, literally, to get out to you guys, which was why I haven't really been out there in person too much. But I will say, thankfully, and this is horrible, but when the pandemic began, you guys started doing your live streams, which is the Farpoint Bartertown streams. And, it's been rough for me because I'm trying not to blow all my money every week on those streams. I've had to skip a few lately. But I got to tell you guys, even just not spending money, just hanging out with everybody, it feels like I've got a second toy family now on those streams. And, you guys just do a great job. And I'd love if you can promote a little bit about what you're doing there with the Bartertown stuff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The Bartertown thing started during the pandemic, but it didn't start, you don't need to spend, you don't have to stay away because you don't want to spend money. It's more about the community. We realized that what we do here in the store, we could sell everything on eBay tomorrow, but what we do in the store is
about the community and talking to people and people sharing their love for fandoms, just like we're doing here right now with Star Trek. People need that community. And during the pandemic, people didn't have that. So we started doing our live streams. We're closed, so we wanted to make some money, but it really became more of a hangout and a way for people to have that community when they couldn't in person.
So every Sunday at 5 p.m.
Eastern
on
time.
Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch at the same time.
Yeah.
We've been doing it for 4 years now.
236 weeks straight.
So we sell some toys, but we also do this.
Yeah.
And actually this Sunday, we are going to...
we're going to talk about our experience with Farragut Forward on the stream. Yeah.
Which will have already happened by the time this one airs, unfortunately. But trust me, it's going to be awesome.
You can always go back and watch reruns.
Yeah. That is true. That is very true. And you guys have an eBay store. Links for everything Farpoint will be in the show notes, of course, as always. Johnny, too, let's make sure we promote what you're doing with Chaotica Films, too. What's going on? How can folks follow you with that?
Yeah, Chaotica Studios, common spelling with a K, Kaotica. You can find us everywhere except TikTok, I think. But chaoticastudios.com. Definitely hit YouTube. Just help us appease our algorithm overlords. If you like what we're doing. And by the way, there's so many behind the scenes features about Farragut Forward on YouTube. There's a lot of them. So go watch all our behind the scenes stuff. And people say like and subscribe all the time, but it really does matter for small indie film studios. The more the more you like, the more you comment, the more you share, that really helps us get picked up in the algorithm. So that stuff really does matter. So please do all that. And you can find us on all the platforms. And
Captain John Broughton, how can folks follow the adventures of the Farragut crew?
Social media, just to start, we have a dedicated Starship Farragut page. We do have a website, but we're still working to launch that. But right now, the farragutforward.com, starshipfarragut.com, it's all being redirected to the one page. But that's currently under construction. We hope after we get the crowdfunder live, we'll get it working. But right now, most people follow us on Facebook and other social media channels.
So everybody go ahead, check out everything we talked about today. I know it's a lot for everybody who's listening and watching. It's a lot to take in, but we're going to have links to everything in the show notes, and it's all worth following and checking out. And if you have not seen Farragut Forward yet, of course, watch that fan film. It really does hold up to like what Justin and Penelope were saying. I mean, this is not what you might think a preconceived notion of what a fan film can be. This is not that. This is beautiful film. I really can't wait to see, honestly, what's going to happen next with the crew. I'm definitely invested now. And this is from someone who really doesn't watch a lot of fan productions, to be honest, because I feel similarly that a lot of them could be hinging on the cringy maybe a little bit. Like some are better than others. But I think this one here, you guys have done amazing work. So everybody who's been part of this panel today, you should all be very proud of what you've accomplished. And I wish you all the most success, in whether it be filmmaking or in a toy store.
Or both.
Or both, yeah.
Thanks, Matt. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
So that's going to wrap up our discussion. For everybody who's still listening and watching right now, don't forget to follow Trek Untold. We're here too, by the way. Follow us on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, and also on TikTok. And if you're also in a position to financially support Trek Untold, visit us on Patreon at patreon.com/Trek Untold. There's going to be links for all the things to do in the show notes, along with everything else we talked about today. So until next time, and on behalf of my many guests here, on behalf of John Broughton, on behalf of Johnny K, on behalf of Justin and Penelope from Farpoint Toys, I'm Matthew Kaplowitz. This has been Trek Untold, and remember, fortune favors the bold.
Trek Untold, the Star Trek podcast that goes beyond the stars, is powered by the Rageworks Podcast Network and affiliated with Nerd News Today.